Have you heard of the retirement hub of Cuenca, Ecuador? Have you considered escaping Canada to Ecuador or another LATAM country for retirement? In this episode, I'm going to be sitting down with Mark from Canadian Refugee in Ecuador. That's his Twitter account. And we're going to be talking about all these themes and more. Welcome back to the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. My guest today is at CDN Refugee on Twitter, also known as Canadian Refugee in Ecuador. Mark, how's it going, man?
It is going awesome. I'm really pleased to be with you. Thank you for asking me to come on.
Mark Vandermass. Am I pronouncing that right?
That's pretty good. Yeah.
Pretty good.
That's pretty
Cool.
good.
So I love having retirees on the podcast because it's a bit of a different perspective than, say, I kind of like having every generation, right? Like the younger guys, maybe the married family man guy, and then the retirees as well. And everyone has a different perspective. And Latin America's makes a lot of sense for people, right? Where they can come down and maybe live with more dignity on a pension and have those retirement savings stretch further. So I'm sure a lot of people are interested in this concept. And Cuenca, Ecuador is definitely one of the retirement hotspots that gets mentioned quite a lot. Obviously, Ecuador is also going through some troubles right now, as we were talking a bit about offline, and something that's been in the news a little bit. I was in Cuenca, Ecuador last year, and I really liked it. I thought it was like super nice. But would love to kind of, where do we start? Would love to kind of hear your story about how you moved from Canada to Ecuador and kind of what the calculus was for you.
Okay. Well, I'll try and keep it brief. We
Yeah.
we did not want to take the experimental vaccine. We were stripped of our rights by our province of New Brunswick, and the premier said, we're going to find ways to make you want to be vaccinated. And then we were still. I'm a fighter. I was arrested 5 times during the Caledonia crisis, trying to end two-tier justice there by the OPP. And so I was prepared to stay and fight. And then Trudeau came out and announced, calling us names, and then announced that he was going to lock us in the country. I did a lot of work with Jewish people over the years, and I understand modern Jewish history really well. So when a government is inciting hate against you and stripping you of your rights and then wants to lock you in the country, it is a very slippery slope to much worse things. And in fact, after we left, Higgs, the premier of New Brunswick, actually tried to deny food to unvaccinated people. He wanted to keep them out of the grocery stores. That lasted about a day because there were 2 pastors that stood up and said, "We don't eat, you're not going to eat." And so our fears were well justified. And of course, we didn't see the convoy coming. Now, we had about, once Trudeau made his announcement that he was gonna lock all unvaccinated people in the country and keep them from traveling, on boats and planes and I think ferries for a while. I said to my wife, I said, I don't know where this is going, but we got to find another place to live. And so what we did is I think we had roughly 6 weeks to give away all our possessions. We had no time to sell them. We had to sort through the important stuff, the precious stuff. We abandoned stuff in the house. We gave probably $30,000 worth of tools away, and we had to find a country. So first we considered Florida, but we realized we were never affording anything there, and we're not going to be able to afford medical care or rent. The rents were crazy. We looked at Panama. We got real serious about Panama at the stage to talk to a lawyer. And then Jackie from I don't know, Panama Relocation Tours called and said,
Yeah.
I don't think you should come here because they're going to do a vax passport. They didn't, but they did some nasty things there, according to some people I've met. Then we looked at Mexico. Well, we couldn't qualify financially for Mexico on our Canadian pensions because I think they're up to, I don't know, at the time, like over 4,000 a month USD. And so then we said, what about that place? We were watching these videos by JP and Amelia, who are very famous Americans.
Yep.
And
They've been on
we
the
watched.
podcast, by the way.
Oh, have they? Yeah,
Yeah.
so we watch. Yeah, so we were watching their videos 6 months before. We had no plans to immediately get out of Canada when we were watching them, and it was kind of funny because the last video we watched, it they were talking about how you couldn't flush toilet paper down the toilet, and I said, "We're not going there, right?" Because we'd never been to Latin America, right?
That'll
And
limit your options in Latin America to
well,
Miami.
so anyway, so after we realized that U.S., Panama, and Mexico weren't going to work, well, maybe let's have another look at that country with the toilet paper thing, right? And of course, here we are, and we absolutely love it. And we came here literally with 3 suitcases, 2 laptops, and one 15-pound Norwegian forest cat. And we've been here 3 years, and we're at the very same location. We live in the same location we as when we started. We just love it. So we have a large 1 bedroom cottage in a garden beside the river, and our patio door backs onto the river, and we
Epic.
love it. And that's what we're here. And I've been warning people for 3 years. You better dig your well before you're thirsty. Uh, and if you can, get out of Canada if and while you can, because listen. Once you've been stripped of all your rights, and most Canadians actually supported that, and been dehumanized and segregated from society, and the Supreme Court has turned down every vax mandate case. Um, you're on a slippery slope, and you better get a plan B in place. And that's basically my message. I don't make any money doing it. I just help Canadians and give them advice, and I'll talk to them. And if they come here to where we live, we take them under our wing and show them the ropes and show them the great community, because JP and Amelia's videos are really great, but what they really miss is the sense of community, especially here in Cuenca, among the gringos. Like, if you come to Cuenca and you're not a jerk, well, even if you're a jerk, you're going to find your tribe. You're going to find a tribe of people to be around, and you're going to do it really, really quickly. And that is the thing that really doesn't come through in their videos, because they're not those kind of people. Like, they're very private, and they're not really into kind of too much socializing. And that was a real surprise for us. And that's one reason we've looked at other places, but we love Cuenca.
Okay, so you find it's pretty easy to get into the expat retiree scene in Cuenca and find people to play cards with and shuffleboard and
Or talk politics with. Okay,
talk,
so
complain about Canada with.
Canada, complain about Canada, complain about the U.S., because most of
Oh
the
God.
Cuenca has about, depending on who you listen to, about 7 to 10,000 um, uh, gringos, which is not a pejorative term here at all. And I
Hmm.
don't know if it is in other countries, but it's not here. And so you're going to find somebody. If you're a wide-eyed lefty loon Marxist radical, you're going to find a tribe here, because there's lots of Democrats here. If you're a Maple MAGA conservative, you're going to find a tribe here. And so there's something for everyone. And it's just awesome. You're going to meet people. Here's a perfect example. We got this couple, Nancy and Alan, came to our church. We got a fabulous church, by the way. And we met them through a friend, and they lived on the coast in Monto, which is exactly where we were going to go, because all
Hmm.
good Canadians want to go to a warm place on a beach, right? I mean, that's your
Right.
initial thought. And so they were living in a really nice apartment on the water in Manta in Ecuador. And they
Hmm.
came for a visit to Cuenca and loved it so much. After 2 weeks, they're moving here. And it's that sense of community that they cited. So you're going to find people, no matter what your politics are, you know.
So I know we're going to be talking about Cuenca a lot in this conversation. Could you help kind of allow people to visualize it a little bit, right? How it's mountainous, the sunlight. Could you kind of just talk about Cuenca, logistically and as a city, and paint the picture a bit?
You betcha. Well, Cuenca is, I believe, a UNESCO World Heritage City because of the architecture here, which is in the old part of the city is absolutely beyond stunning. The 6 domes of the cathedral are world famous, and it's just a stunning city. We have It's at roughly, it varies because it's in a valley at the top of the Andes Mountains, about a 4 hour drive from the coast. Well, that drive is only about 60 miles, but because of the mountains, you're winding through the mountains, it takes a while to get there. So we're really not that far from the coast. And so you have this um, beautiful city, well managed city in a valley at about 8,400, give or take, feet. So some people do have trouble with the altitude, but it usually clears up after a while. You have a fabulous transit system that I used to drive for the Toronto Transit Commission, and that was pre-internet days. So you know how old I am. And I'm telling you, I've never seen a transit system like this. You can get almost anywhere in the city. There's about 600,000 people here, and you can get almost anywhere on a bus without transferring. And the buses for seniors are half price, which is 15 cents. We have a beautiful tram or light rail system that runs diagonally across the city, 17 cents if you're a senior, right? Because it's half price. So you have this gorgeous city, and the weather is magnificent. So it's like an early Canadian summer all year round. So some days rain, some days shine, sometimes warm, sometimes cool. No snow, no humidity, no mosquitoes. Um, you can drink the water here. And people can't go, no, come on, Mark. No mosquitoes. Okay, I've seen 4 of them in 3 years. It's really that great. And so it's this amazing city. And we almost didn't come here, but we're so glad we did. And that's what we recommend for anybody who's seriously thinking of starting a new life without snow and totalitarianism from Canada. Start here in Cuenca. You just can't go wrong. Our hospitals, we are within walking distance of 3 private hospitals. And one of them is the kind of famous here, anyways, Mount Sinai, and it is probably one of the best hospital in Cuenca. We are well known for medical care here. We got our dental work done here. Um, the dental work we had full mouth restorations, and we paid about $14,000 with a 10-year guarantee on it. So you've got great medical, great dental. You got drinkable water right out of the tap. People don't believe it, but it's true. And I drink the water right out of the tap. And so it's this gorgeous kind of vibrant city. It's kind of a mixture of the U.S., a little bit of U.S., a little bit of Europe, and Latin America. And it's so and the people are so wonderful here, and especially to the gringos who don't speak the language yet. So they're very warm people. They're very easy to get along with. They're not into confrontation. It's just a really um, amazing place to live. And I wrote an article about it. It's at markvandermass.substack.com. You can find it in there. And it outlines, a lot of the points we'll talk about. I mean, Cuenca just has a lot going for it, and totally unexpected, you know.
Hmm.
So I don't know. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, no, it helps kind of it helps. And Cuenca, they say, has like it's voted among the cities with the best weather in the world, right?
Yeah, technically, I think Vilcabamba is, which is about 4.5 hours south of us, but it's a
Hmm.
little bit warm and it's a really very small place, and I don't find it that attractive. The area is very nice. It's a great place to go to have a holiday at the Ishkaluma Resort and look at the stunning views. I'm not sure I'd want to live there, but yeah, the weather here is just magnificent. I just don't know how to describe it. I'm a sweater. Like I sweat. And when I was
Hmm.
in the army, the sergeant would always say to me, Vandermass, take a break. You're sweating like crazy. And I'd say, yes, sir. But that's what I'm a sweater. But here I almost never sweat. It's just not humid. You just can't say enough about the weather. Now, some people will find it a little cool, especially if they're used to a really much warmer climate. But what's interesting is most of the people who come here are coming from super hot American states. That's the weird part,
Oh
rather than
yeah.
cold ones. But for Canadians, it's it's just perfect. It's just perfect. Everything grows, you know. We just love it.
Yeah, so let's talk about some more pros and cons. I guess we've done a good amount of fluffy stuff on the pros. We probably could go more into detail, but I think we got to hit people with the cons as well to keep
Of
it a little
course,
bit balanced.
you bet.
So at the moment, you mentioned there's some rolling blackouts going on.
Oh yeah, we have uh, our hydro, our electricity is almost 100% um, uh, comes from hydroelectricity, and we don't have huge lakes here, and so it's all dependent on rainfall and the rivers. Now, we've been here 3 years on November 18th, and we had minor blackouts last year. But this year, we've had almost 2 months with very little rain. And so the blackouts have escalated to the point now we're at 14 hours a day. And they stagger it out. Like today, it was like 4 till 9 o'clock this morning, and then at 12 it goes off till 5, and then at 8 p.m. it'll go off till 12. And it sounds like a huge thing, and it is, I think, for some businesses. But for day-to-day life here, I'm telling you, and I'm not exaggerating, I would still rather be here than in Canada, because we have a diverse, and I just love that word, diversity. We have a diverse energy supply here. Our cooking is done with propane bottles that cost $3 each to refill. Our hot water comes from propane. The buses are diesel. Um, we have no snow, no AC, so the restaurants are always open air, kind of almost anyway, and so it's no real big deal. It really isn't. There's no looting. There's no rioting. It's no big deal. But you think about Canada right now. If
Hmm.
everything was electric, there would be panic, just absolute chaos. We have a police officer that moved down here, and I asked him, "What do you think would happen in Toronto with 14-hour blackouts every day?" Yeah, yeah, it'd be bad. So
Hmm.
it's not bad here. We're just living our life and going about, and it's awesome. I cook on the barbecue. So that's one of the downsides right now, but that's just temporary. And you know what? It's nobody's real fault. Um, and and that's why I don't have a problem with it. It's not like my government deliberately is trying to hurt me, like our Canadian government, constantly trying to find a new way. Yeah, you laugh. True, right?
Yeah, it's like in the US, Canada, Europe, the government is like making your life worse on purpose,
Yeah.
whereas in Latin America, they sort of do it by accident.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. It is, right? But and that's the difference. I like every day it's something new in Canada. Every bloody day it's something new. And we sort of looked and we said, it'd be kind of nice to go back to Canada and spend summers there and something. No, we'd have no health care. Like I've had a heart attack in the past, 9 years ago. We'd have to spend 5 months a year, um, wondering if I would get medical care or what happens if my wife gets sick. What are you going to do? And so it's too risky. And of course, now I don't want to go too far into the political weeds, but they got Bill
Hmm.
C-63 that's about to pass. And I've kind of got a big mouth. I'm an activist, a rule of law activist. I've been to jail 5 times, and I don't keep my mouth shut. And of course, under Bill C-63, anonymous people can file hate speech charges against you, and you get secret trials. You can get a monitoring bracelet put on you just for an allegation. If that passes, every conservative who opens a mouth in Canada is going to be at risk, and it'll be a whole career path for gender studies grads from the universities. And so Canada presents some very real, and I mean tangible dangers to 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 your freedom, to your mentality, and we have none of that here. Our government still knows that we have to go after here in Ecuador. They go after the bad people. They try. I mean, they're not. They're working on it. And Cuenca, of course, is very safe city. It's the second safest place in Ecuador, next to, can't think of the one, Otavalu, which is a very tiny place. And
Oh,
so
wow.
but in Canada, I got to worry about my government putting me in jail. I got to worry about whether I'm going to get health care. It's just it's really a different feeling here. Like we still have we still have assets in Canada, but we're about to um, uh, change that, and we're going to be declaring, from a right now we're still technically Canadian resident. Once you become a non-Canadian resident, still a citizen, the Ecuador tax treaty, the Ecuador Canada tax treaty kicks in, and that provides on pension income. There's a $12,000 per person uh, exemption on Canadian
You've talked
sources.
about this on Twitter.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's in the article,
Could
and I
could you
put a link.
run through that like
Sure,
real quick?
sure.
And maybe if you know how it might apply to Americans as well, just kind of address the two groups.
I can't even comment on Americans because they're subject to some form of dual taxation, and you really can't. I can't comment on that, but Canada I can. And this was confirmed by a police officer who's immigrating here. She helped me find the pages. So essentially, what
Hmm.
happens is once you are a non-resident of Canada, so if I we declare ourselves as residents of Ecuador, we
Yep.
file form NR5 with CRA, and then the first $12,000 each of pension income is from Canadian sources is tax free. The rest is taxed at 15%. That's how that works. But you have to keep in mind, as our tax guy told us, once you're a non-resident of Canada, you no longer have personal exemption. So this is how Canada's still screwing you. You get to pay taxes uh, for stuff that, like, we can't use Canadian healthcare, even if we went back for at least 3 months. And so this tax treaty provides that exemption for pension income, but you have to file Form NR5. The other thing that the treaty provides for, and we're still working this out, but it seems pretty clear, is that if you have a business that earns income in Canada, but the management team and the head office are in Ecuador, that also falls under the Canada Ecuador tax. So we have a travel business. So we're hoping that the treaty will get that income taxed here. Now, why do we want it taxed here? Because Ecuador has this amazing constitution that gives really great rights to retired people. Once you're over 65, your property taxes are half. So instead of paying $200 a year, you pay 100. But you get your normal $11,000 tax deduction that you would get in Ecuador on income in USD,
Hmm.
by the way, doubles to 22,000. So together, my wife and I would have $44,000 USD of a tax exemption on any of the income, on our income. So it works out really well. Ecuador is so good to retired people. There's no other place, and there's no other country in Latin America that has that kind of a tax treaty. Not one. So for retired people, Ecuador is perfect. Perfect climate, perfect city, perfect taxes. Now, the bad stuff, yeah, we got our blackouts. There is crime on the coast. Okay, they're trying to address it. That's kind of one of the bad things. Um, there really isn't too many. There really aren't too many bad things about being here specifically in Cuenca. Okay, would I want to live in Guayaquil on the coast? That's kind of, there are gangs in there, and not very nice ones. So, you know, but Cuenca, just this nice little oasis of sanity. And the government
Hmm.
here doesn't spend money on woke stuff because they don't have tons of money. They spend it on stuff that the majority of the people would like to. Give you an example. Just down the street from us, you have to climb a hill to get into the old city of Cuenca, where all the fabulous architecture, most of it is. And so
Hmm.
they've got these stairs, and there's like 75 of these stairs, and we still can't walk up them in one go. But they're putting in an escalator. So they took out all the stairs, rebuilt the whole thing, and they're putting in an
Where
escalator.
that church is?
What's that?
Where the church is, kind of up on the hill, out of town,
The
or
main
no?
church. Yeah, no. The church. Oh, no. You're thinking Turi. Turi is up on
Yeah,
the south side that overlooks
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
city on the south peaks. But to get into the old city, north, yeah, they have these stairs that you got to climb. We game the system. We take the bus up and we walk down. So give the lazy man a job, he'll find an easy way to do it. So
Hmm.
there aren't a lot of negatives about Ecuador, but you never know, and there are a lot of positive too. And Ecuador rejected central bank digital currency around 2017 because they had banks fail in the past before they went to, or around the time that they switched to the USD. So we use the USD, but we can't print it. And I talked to an economist who from Montreal who was working in Grand Cayman, I think. And I asked her, I said, "What do you think about the possibilities of hyperinflation?" Because I saw that for Canada before we left. I knew that was. And she said, "It can't happen here." I said, "Why?" She said, "Because they use the U.S. dollar, but they can't print it, so they can't print money here, which is great." And so
Hmm.
that's why our inflation rate last year was 1.35%,
Wow.
right? Like
Tell
there's
me this:
no.
how does it feel spending U.S. dollars as a Canadian? Because obviously you feel the sting in the U.S., but I've been to Cuenca and the prices are pretty cheap in U.S. terms. You know what I mean? Like, $1.50 burgers and this kind of things. Or you tell me, how does it sting having to use USD?
Um, yes, because especially now, I think this morning the USD was like 1.39, and
Yeah.
so it's awful, and it's still worth it. So yes, it hurts, but we offset through. We have some Bitcoin, we have some gold, and it offsets that, and those are denominated in U.S. dollars, so that helps. But we live on our pensions as much as possible. Pretty much, we live on our pensions, and that really hurts. But the prices, like for example, we walk around the corner right from where we live. We can go eat an almuerzo lunch, which is a working man's lunch, for $3.50, and we get a protein, a chicken, a pork, whatever. We get rice, we get salad, we get a drink, and we get dessert for $3.50 USD. So do we eat there all the time? Of course not. No, we have, the restaurants here are fabulous. We've had Italian last night, and then the night before it was Indian food, which was great. But those are more expensive, a little bit more expensive, especially the Indian stuff. And so we spend probably too much money eating out, but that's our entertainment. And the problem in the problem in Cuenca here is that we have too many social engagements, and it makes it like people will say, "Hey, I'm going to go to Sabatino's. You want to meet me for lunch in 20 minutes?" Yeah, okay. Well, you can't do that in Canada. You just can't.
This is
And
the
so, and I know
spontaneity.
you've probably felt the same thing. It's just so uh, social here. And so, I try to figure out how to cut back on some of the social engagement. But, we have a conservative dinner group here. We go out once a week on Wednesday night and we go to a different restaurant. We talk politics. There are a couple of token liberals who get offended. We don't care. But, don't come to our group if you don't want to be offended. So we don't really care. So and they have their own groups. Like they'll go to their other place. They'll go to their own restaurant. So
This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you in part by Crema Social. Crema Social is like TikTok for international dating. It's an app you can download right now on your phone, and 3 out of 4 people on Crema are single women. The app was founded in Colombia, so unsurprisingly, there are a lot of Latinas on the app, by the way. So how does it work? Crema Social is a social meal experience where you invite a hot girl for a lunch date via video call and food delivery. New concept, so you'll have to try it out for yourself, but this is probably the best way to meet Latinas before you visit the country. So if you're in Latin America or planning to visit Latin America, download Crema Social now and start getting dates right away. There will be a link in the description to download, or just search Crema Social on your favorite app store. Have fun, guys. This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you in part by Bit Refill. BitRefill is the best way to spend your crypto in Latin America. Purchase gift cards or mobile refills from more than 3,500 brands in 186 countries instantly, safely, and privately. You can also apply the code MyLatinLife at checkout to get 10% back on your first purchase. Go to bitrefill.com for more information. This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you in part by Job Stacking. If you are a remote or hybrid worker looking to maximize your earning potential, then Rolf Holtze, the author of Job Stacking, guarantees you'll be able to double your income. This is the exact system Rolf has used to take his own income and those of many others beyond $20K a month. So what is job stacking? It's this idea of working multiple remote jobs. You might have heard Rolf, he's worked 5, 7, even 9 remote jobs at the same time before. And by the way, job stacking works equally well for non-technical roles. So no, it's not just for the nerds. So if you're ready to job stack, then book a discovery call with Job Stacking and see how they can double your income in just 9 weeks. In the show notes in the description, there will be a link where you can book a call directly on the Calendly of Job Stacking and be talking with them as early as tomorrow about how to double your income as quickly as possible.
It's really the social aspect is one of the we have a life here we could never had in Canada, couldn't afford to have in Canada, and never would have had it in Canada. That's the life we have, this perfect life. It's just amazing. Like yesterday, our pastor said, "Hey, we would you like to go to the hot springs with us?" And there are various hot springs in Cuenca. We hadn't
That's
been to
cool.
this place, and it blew our mind. Blew our minds. $5 for seniors to get in for the day. Hot water pool, hot tub, cold plunge, Turkish bath. It's just that's that's the amazing thing about it, about Cuenca. Just you're not on the ocean, but you're not far from warm water.
Hmm. Speak to the social stuff a little bit more. This is something that I think everyone notices when they come down to Latin America. Is it's just much easier. Certainly, me is it's just much easier to make plans. Like in Canada, you try to get 5 dudes together for a steak dinner. If you would have to invite 20 people to get 5 people out. You know what I mean? Because everyone's too busy, but it's not very clear with what, and you know what I mean.
Well, you
And
have that. Yeah, you have that sort of lack of commitment. I don't have a lot of patience with people who can't make a decision. Tell me yes, tell me no, but don't tell me maybe. I don't care. But you are absolutely right, and I'm sure it's the same in Mexico. I know an RCMP officer who's in Mexico. I'm sure it's the same for him. But I'm telling you, it's just we actually thought about going to the coast, checking it out. Would we want to live there? Because there would be the beach, but it's hot and sweaty. Should we go? But we now realize that we love our life here so much, and the people that we can socialize with. And not everybody we socialize with, I want to have over for a barbecue, but that's not really the point. But there are enough of them that you can make friends really quickly here and acquaintances too. I'm very picky. I think we're lucky if we have 1 or 2 friends our whole life. Most of the people who come into our life are just acquaintances, but that's me. But you are going to make friends. The only reason you couldn't make friends in Cuenca is you're a jerk. No, you're seriously, because you're going to be walking in. I'm sitting in the dentist office, and comes this couple, and hey, how you doing? Oh, where are you from? I'm from Canada. Where are you from? Well, I'm from Tennessee. Oh, really? And we'll start talking about stuff, and now they're really good friends, and we got other friends, ex-US Air Force intelligence guy. He, I can't remember where we met him. I think at a restaurant early on. He's the power of attorney for our POA, and because we don't not good to use wills here, and you just have a lot of different people that you can do stuff with. You know,
hmm
I I just love it. To move away from Cuenca would be really hard. Like even going back to Canada, aside from the healthcare, aside from the crazy socialist government, the other thing is, do you really want to go back into a neighborhood like our neighborhood in London? We had this beautiful house in London, Ontario. We didn't even know our neighbors' names. Nobody was interested. Nobody wanted to know you. And it's a completely different life here. I mean, radically different life here in a very, very good way. And everybody shares. And there's no real competition. And everybody's willing to help you. I'm looking for this. I need a doctor. I need a chiropractor. I need a, you know, oh, okay, I can help you with that. It's just this helping environment,
Hmm.
and this sense of camaraderie among, I even help Democrats go up and get bus pass. Like I help people take.
Even help Democrats. Yeah, no, I get it because yeah, I think especially for retirees, right? Some of your friends move on, maybe pass away, unfortunately, or any number of things, right? And so you kind of find maybe as a North American adult that your circle just keeps getting smaller and smaller, and it's hard to make new friends. But you come down to Latin America, and it's just a more friendly environment, right? Where people are, you'll feel re-energized. There's more social activities, whatever you're into, and it's easy to make friends, right?
No, it really is. And I listen. I hate to sound so bigoted, but we have them down here. I haven't met one yet that I could actually have a sane conversation with, except maybe one, and it's just irrational, stuff, hatred of things. Like, the other night we had people eating our food and talking about how Trump is a Nazi. And I said, I guess I am too then. Right. And it's like, and, I just, you got to cope with that stuff. And the best way I know how is I'm nice to them while they're at the hotel, but you're never going to be my friends because I don't like that. So it's a kind of this natural selection process. And at first, I was pretty easygoing and tolerant. But now, basically, my introduction is, "Hi, my name's Mark. I'm an unvaxxed Christian Zionist Trump supporter. Tell me about yourself." And it weeds them out real fast, right? No, I'm sorry. I'm just done apologizing. Enough of that in Canada. I'm done with it. And fortunately, there's enough people like us, that we can do that. And I'm sure, the Democrats would tell you the exact opposite. We're all racist Nazis. So they have their world, we have our world, and sometimes it crosses over, and it's great. There's a place in Cuenca for everybody.
Hmm.
What was that other thing
And
you said about?
well, just like social life skyrocketing. Maybe you could touch upon like how the family friendliness of it too. If there's some people with families here, have you noticed maybe that Ecuador is more family friendly than say Canada is?
Well, first of all, Ecuadorians are very family oriented. Like there's a real problem actually for gringos, but I think is getting solved slowly. Is that the Ecuadorians look after their old people? They really do. They really respect old people. And I like to joke. Well, my wife is sitting right beside me, and I joke because you'll get on the bus, and there'll be some little Ecuadorian guy and he'll jump up and offer her the seat. And I laugh at her, right? And I said, they're standing up for the old lady. And, but they're so polite, and I love it. Now, for family, if I was a family member, and I've never been to El Salvador, but I'm in touch with some people there. And I think El Salvador is better if you have to work, if you're working, then I think probably El Salvador might be a good thing to check out. Because in Ecuador, you're not really going to be working as a younger person with kids. Okay. Now, if you're independently wealthy and you don't need to work,
Uh huh.
your kids can go to school. We had this Chinese lady at our hotel for 2 years. She had this really cute little girl who went to school here, and we met other gringos. But we don't know really any families per se. Cuenca is really mostly retired gringos. I
Hmm.
think some of them are way older than us. I mean, it's kind of funny. There's a famous, kind of a semi-famous restaurant here called Sunrise Cafe up on Calle Larga, and we have a New York buddy here who's 83. He says, when I go into that place, I feel like I'm going into God's waiting room. So if I was a family, especially if I had to work, I would look for somewhere else than Ecuador. I think unless you're independently wealthy. That's
Right.
that's
Or
that's
making money online. But yeah, I guess the local
or making money
Ecuadorians,
on it.
I guess
Exactly.
the local Ecuadorians obviously, um, you know, uh, family friendly, invite you to
Oh,
the barbecue, all that good stuff.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. These people are wonderful. I mean, really, everybody talks about it. How nice they are, especially to the dumb gringos who don't speak much Spanish.
Do you find that the Spanish thing is um, something that maybe leads people to leave Ecuador, like
No,
if they can't adapt,
no,
or
no, not at all. Because if you can't make it in Cuenca as as a English only speaker, you ain't making it anywhere. Because we have a whole infrastructure. Because you got 7 to 10,000 gringos, and most of them have some money. There's a whole unofficial support structure here. So our doctor speaks 4 languages. She's a Belgian lady. Our insurance broker is fluent English. Worked in the U.S. for many years.
Mhm,
Our hairdresser, hair cutter speaks English. Our lawyer speaks English. Most of the doctors will speak English. You can get an English speaking house call right to where we live. Just had a resident here that had to do it,
mhm,
and so no, it's not really an issue. So for the day to day stuff, hey, no problem. You can get through. We've got Google Translate. We've got and so that gets you through, and you get your little pigeon Spanish. So you can order in a restaurant. You can order cebollas and tomates and melons and everything at the local tienda.
mhm.
But if you have complicated stuff, then you're going to need to get a facilitator. So if you need to sign up for the public health system, then you're going to need a facilitator of some kind. Or you go into the bank. There's one bank here, JEP. They have a whole English speaking team. They cater to gringos.
Nice.
And so, but our bank isn't kind of like that. We have an account at a major bank called Prado Banco, and you're probably not going to get English speakers there, but they're very nice. And for $10 an hour, you hire the facilitator and you get her done. So English is, if you don't speak English, that is the least of your concerns coming to. You're going to do just fine.
Okay, good, good. Um,
And
sounds
we're
like you may
living
be
proof,
just
by
fine
the way.
in English.
We're living proof of that because we made a decision. We're not going to take any formal Spanish lessons until we've got really basically our permanent visa. Okay, and we know for sure we're staying and we're not going back. And now we've signed up for Pimsleur.com, and you know we haven't started it yet, but we're
Uh-huh.
living proof you can get by perfectly well without Spanish. Not recommended in the long term because you still feel like I feel frustrated a bit because I can't participate in the political system like I
Hmm.
would in Canada. And
maybe that's
maybe
maybe
that's
that's for a good
good.
thing.
Maybe
Yeah,
that's a really good
you
thing.
get yourself in a little trouble.
Yeah.
You mentioned the visas. Quick plug: My Latin Life. We're a full-scale immigration firm, and we can help people get residency in any country in Latin America, including Ecuador. So we can do, retirement visas, investor visas, and
Oh, I didn't
everything
know.
in Ecuador. Um, Maybe I would love to hear your experience with the residency, and it's so I'm sure it was pretty smooth to get it off the bat.
No.
No, okay.
Not we're kind of atypical because we had to get out of Canada very quickly. We didn't have time to do all the paperwork before we left, so we came as a tourist, and that was one of the I could be honest with you. We came to Ecuador because they would take us unvaxxed and they would allow us to apply for residency while we were tourists in the country, and that was the criteria. And so we didn't have time to do all the paperwork. We had to pay a fortune to a company in Ottawa whose name escapes. Oh, RSI, something like that. And they were getting all the documents authenticated. Well, that's all gone now because now we're on the apostille system.
Uh-huh.
I haven't done it. I'm not intimately acquainted with it. And so they got all the documents, curried them down to our visa agent, um, and we got it. 3 months after we got it, just before we were going to apply. They tripled the income requirements from 425 to 1275,
Wow.
and but our visa agent coped with that just fine. So if you come, you're going to get your visa if you qualify. They've just instituted a new program where they claim that you're going to be able to approve it electronically in 5 days if you
Wow.
get everything done. But I don't know if that's realistic or not. But generally, the biggest problem that you're going to have with visas, especially generally here, is communication, because the Ecuadorians, I don't know, they kind of like to keep information from you. So you got to really go to dental school and know how to pull teeth to get some of the answers right. Like when we were
Hmm.
coming, for example, we're asking them, "What do we need? What do we need?" Yeah, and we didn't hear from them for a while. And then finally, we heard from them like 3 days before we were supposed to leave the damn country. Oh, you have to get this notarized. Your pension. Well, that would have been good to know when I was asking you 10 days ago. That kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Then we get here. Oh, you want to get a driver's license? Well, you're going to need a copy of your abstract from Canada. That would have been good to know. But you can't get mad at them because Ecuadorians are not confrontational. So they don't respond well to that. But it's just every gringo complains about the communication. Okay. So if you've got somebody who can speak now, there are other ones. Like I can't comment. There are some other during the article, and there are some that are supposed to be really, really good, but we didn't use them. And the guys we used once we got here, they were pretty good. But you're going to be pulling teeth. You really have to ask questions.
Hmm.
So because it's in their culture, there's something in this culture that I got to keep some of that information secret because it makes me, I don't know, maybe more valuable somehow. And so you're constantly, well, why didn't you tell me that? And they'll say, okay, we're going to get you, you have to go see the notary today. And okay, so it's 10 o'clock. Great. So you show up at the office at 10 o'clock. Nobody's there. And then finally, you reach some, oh no, you're supposed to meet them over at the notary. That would have been good to know. Just stuff like that. And it's so frustrating. But
Hmm.
you just gotta. We have a saying in Ecuador: TIE. This is Ecuador. Just roll with the punches.
Yep.
You just have to get used to that. It's not going to be like Canada, but it's going to be a hell of a lot better.
That's it. And regarding you're talking about the permanent residency,
Mhm.
so I believe it's 2 years of temporary. You have to spend. You can only be outside of Ecuador not very long. I think it's like 90 days within the 2 years,
Correct.
something like that, right?
Correct.
In order to renew to permanent. If you can't maintain that physical presence because it is pretty strict, famously pretty strict, then they'll renew you as temporary again, I believe. Um, so is that does that kind of line up with what you've been hearing and seeing, or are
Yes.
people maybe getting renewed to permanent even if they haven't done the
Oh no.
admittedly strict permanent
They,
residency requirements?
this ain't Canada and this ain't U.S. They stick to their deadlines. You miss it by one day and you're screwed. Like they are
Mm,
serious here. So
mm,
as you said correctly, during the first 2 years, you can't be out of the country for more than 90 days. After 21 months, you can then submit an application for permanent. Once you have your permanent granted, you cannot be out of Ecuador more than 180 days per year during the first 2 years. Then after that, it is you have to come back for at least one day every 2 years. And the system is designed. I mean, it's not like Paraguay where you would you basically fly in, get your visas with no residency time. You have to want to be here, and
mm.
thankfully Cuenca makes that easy for you. So, but they're very strict on deadlines. Very, very strict. I got to tell you a funny story though. This is pretty funny.
Sure.
It tells you. It tells you. It's really funny. So, anyways, I'm born in Hamilton, Ontario, in Canada.
Hmm.
Great big city, 350,000 people. So I get my temporary visa and we go in. It's all approved. We have to go get our schedule. That's a separate appointment. They do the fingerprints and they review your stuff. And so I'm looking at the information on the screen, and I said, well, there's one problem. I wasn't born in Hamiota, Manitoba, which is 1,000 miles from where I was really born. And, oh, okay. We don't have Hamilton, Ontario in the drop down menu. And so we're saying, well, can you put it in? No, we'll do that next time when you come for your permanent visa. I said, okay. So now my schedule shows my birthplace as Hamiota, Manitoba, which is a little tiny place, but they don't have one of the biggest cities in Ontario in their drop down. So 2 years passes. I remind our visa agent. Now remember, we got to fix the cedula so that we have the correct birthplace. Oh yeah, no problem. No, everything's fine. No problem. We get our permanent cedula.
Hmm.
They still have Hamiota, Manitoba. So you get to the point like when we go to the bank, they ask you, okay, can I see your schedule? And I'm thinking in my mind, as I would in Canada, should I tell them I wasn't born in Hamiota? Nah, I would just let it go. It's just kind of funny. So, all right. But it's just hilarious. But it's worth it. It really is. So
Awesome. Any topics you feel like you didn't get a chance to touch upon, but
that's
wanted to
okay.
mention?
Well, I would say, I was just dealing with this. I'm getting inquiries kind of all the time about people, wondering about how to escape Canada. And
Hmm.
one of the common themes is for people that really hold them back is their kids. Oh, I don't want to be away from my grandchildren. I don't want to be away from my kids. And
Hmm.
there's two thoughts on that. Okay. First of all, you better face the reality that your children and your grandchildren and all the friends who said they might come to see are never going to they're never
Yeah.
coming. The planes only work one direction, and that's the direction you have to pay for to go. Second thing, when you talk to them, say, how often do you see your grandkids now? Well, a couple times a year. And let me guess, you have to drive to go and see them? Yeah. They don't give a rat's behind about you. About you. I'm sorry, that's a brutal truth. There are exceptions, but you have to accept that all the people in your life are I had this woman. She really was offended, kind of, and she comes to our regular Wednesday night dinner, and she said, "Oh, my sister won't come to see me. I'm so lonely, or I miss her." And I said, "If your sister cared about you, because it's not a financial thing. These people they have the money. I said, if your sister really cared about you, she'd get on a plane, come and see you at least once in the last 5 years. She doesn't care that much about you." And she was really offended. So she went back. She paid to go back to the U.S. to see her sister. And now she wants to cut her trip short to come back to Cuenca. So that's the reality of it. It's probably not going to happen for you. And you really have to accept that. And you have to decide, am I going to give up my life experiences for people who I might only see once in a while, or not? And I can't answer that. Okay, we don't have any kids, my wife and I, so it's easy for us to talk. For other people who have the kids, it's harder, but they make it work. I mean, worst case, you have to pay your way back to the States or Canada to see them. So I think that's a big factor, here.
Hmm.
And you also have to have both spouses have to be on board. Excuse me. And we had, like, for example, we have one couple who came down here, and she really didn't want to come. She said, "I'll give you a year, but we better be out of here before the year's up if I don't like it." Where do you think that led to? The guy actually bought two motorcycles. She wouldn't go out on the motorcycle. She wouldn't leave the apartment, and no surprise, they're back in the States. And so you really have to have your spouse on board. I am so blessed to have my wife who, I watched her. I never saw her cry so much in my life as I did during those 6 weeks when she's sorting through all her possessions and deciding which ones she was going to give away and which ones she was going to keep in hopes of bring them. And so you're really blessed if you have a wonderful spouse who's with you. And I've made it clear to her because I kind of owe her for all those times I went to jail and worked as an activist instead of making money. If she wanted to go back to Canada, I would go whatever the price is that we had to pay. And no, she says that doesn't make sense for us. And so I am the luckiest guy in the world. So that's all I got to say. You got to plug the wife, especially when she's sitting beside you. But it's all true. Like I am so blessed; it's beyond understanding.
That's awesome, man. I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
So let's send the podcast off there.
Okay.
Mark, do you have any final words for the audience? I know you have a Substack you might want to shout out. I guess you have a what would you call it? Like a travel agency type thing? Maybe you want to
Well, my
shout out.
wife and I, yeah, she has a set sort of client, so we're not looking for clients other than people who are seriously coming here. Like once you've made the decision to come to Ecuador, then you need to be talking to my wife. She's been in the business a long time. She knows how to save money. She understands Ecuador, and so she can help you a lot. The Substack is Mark Vandermass, Vandermass.substack.com. And I have an article there. It's kind of long. I keep adding to it. It's called Ecuador 101 and Other Options for Canadian Refugees. And it includes options like Paraguay and El Salvador and Mexico. Um, and um, and so, I mean, you have to do what's right for you. My mission isn't to get you to Ecuador. My mission is to give you information and really encourage you and bully you almost to want to be free. And I think that's the thing. Most of your fears are ungrounded. We really didn't have any idea what we were coming to. We really didn't. And we had sort of an idea, but we didn't know. I mean, it was a total, I mean, we gave away everything we owned to come to a strange country where we didn't speak the language and we love it. So don't be afraid of things you don't understand. And the benefit right now, if you're a Canadian listening to this, guys, here to help you. I'll do a DM with you. I'll do a Zoom with you. Vance here is can probably help you because you're going to need a visa age. I would not do immigrate without a visa. I would not do this without a visa agent who really knows the ropes and has connections. And that's, there is somebody I know who's in our hotel right now, our apart hotel, um, who did it all on her own at a Canadian embassy or the Ecuadorian embassy. But I wouldn't do that, especially if you're sort of on the edge of qualifying. So,
Mm,
read the article and give it some thought. But don't be afraid. Stop. Don't. I'm not one to live in fear. I do not live in fear. And people are saying, well, everybody wants to talk and yap and complain and wish and no, I'm in action. And, oh, if only other people did this. If we all did this, this could be better. Guys, the sheep ain't waking up. Okay, they don't wake up and even when the knife's going across their throat. You have to take personal responsibility for the safety and well-being of your family. So I tell
mhm.
people, dig your well now before you're thirsty. Get out if and while you still can. That's the best. That's all I got. But thank you for having me.
Absolutely. This has been another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Again, my guest today, Mark Vandermass, Canadian refugee in Ecuador. And for the audience listening to this, whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Twitter, YouTube, please be sure to subscribe. We put out 2 episodes a week with amazing guests like Mark, and you won't want to miss an episode. Check out our backlog of more than 200 episodes as well. In particular, you guys might like the one with JP and Amelia that has an Ecuador focus as well. Ciao for now.